What is up, YouTube? bcdfezz here, and today we're going to be talking about a card called Soul Release. Now first, before I begin, I wanted to let you all know how excited I am. This is my very first video that I'm putting up on this channel, and I hope to get a lot more videos out pretty soon. This is going to be the start of a series of card discussions. I'll be talking about cards that aren't used very much but can still be pretty useful. Hopefully you guys will be able to get to know a little bit more of some cards that don't see a lot of play. So let's begin. This card originally came out in Starter Deck Pegasus and Metal Raiders, which was forever ago. Since it's been reprinted a couple times in Dark Beginning 1 and in Structure Deck the Dark Emperor. This card doesn't see a lot of play in today's current meta. However, I believe that it can still be useful. Now obviously it can be used in cards or in decks that are based around cards being banished. However, can it be used in a regular deck? Can it be side deck? Well, let's take a look at this card. Today we're going to be talking about 3 different aspects of it that make it pretty decent. I'll even add in some replay towards the end that will kind of explain one of the things I'll be talking about. So before we begin, let's read the effect. It says, select up to 5 cards from the graveyards and remove them from play. Okay, the first thing I wanted to mention, 5 cards. That's a big deal. Let's talk about why it's a big deal now, but it wasn't back in the day. Back in the day, having cards in the graveyard didn't mean anything. If it went to the graveyard, it meant it was dead. Stayed there. That's why it was originally called the graveyard. The only time that you really could get anything out of the graveyard is if you had something amazing like Call of the Haunted or Premature Burial, which were both ultra rares at the time. There was also Monster Reborn, which came in starter decks, but that's besides the point. The idea is that when things were in the graveyard, they stayed there. So Soul Release wasn't really that important back then. I mean, what was the point if it's never going to come back? Nowadays, things are a lot different. A lot of decks require cards in the graveyard, or rely on cards being there. That's why, we have Foolish Burial. Throw something in there that we need. Or even Armageddon Knight. Cards like these come out now because decks rely on cards being in the graveyard. Soul Release can upset a lot of those strategies, because if someone needs their cards in the graveyard, well, they're not there anymore. Simple. So Soul Release allows you to get rid of the 5 cards in the graveyard. This can really make your opponent take a hit, especially if they're playing decks that swarm from the graveyard, like Inzectors. Also, it can work great against a Lightsworn deck. Oh, you have 4 different Lightsworns in the graveyard? Well, too bad. They're all banished now, so no Judgment Dragon for you. Okay, let's go over the second aspect of this card I wanted to talk about. So before this card was errated, it originally said, select 5 cards from either you or your opponent's graveyard. Now this errata makes it more clear that you can banish cards from either player's graveyard. Also, because of the way that the current meta is worded, you can choose to banish from not just either player's, but also both players' graveyards. This obviously works really well with out-of-play decks. However, there are other situations where you would want to banish cards from your own graveyard. Let's take an example. First off, I play Dark Armed Dragon in my deck. And I have quite a few Darks in my deck. This is just in support so that I can get out Dark Armed Dragon. Well, a lot of times I won't draw Dark Armed Dragon until very late into the game, and by then I have, 5, 6, 7 Darks already in the graveyard. So this goes for any other monster that might need exactly a certain amount of cards in the graveyard. Since Soul Release can release cards from either player's graveyards, I can remove cards from my own graveyard and make it simple. Remove what I need to, and now I've got 3 Darks in the graveyard, I can pull out my Dark Armed Dragon. Also, Soul Release can remove from both players at the same time, so if you get it right, you can both set yourself up for something awesome and sack your opponent at the same time. Alright, finally, let's talk about the third aspect of this card that makes it pretty good in my opinion. 2 simple words. Up to. Why is that important? Up to. Well, those 2 words make a huge difference. It's a difference between cost and a convenience. Let's take a look at another card, Pot of Avarice. Let's imagine that Pot of Avarice said, target up to 5 monsters in the graveyard. It would be extremely OP and would have been banned a very, very long time ago. Soul Release doesn't have to banish 5 cards for it to work. If you really want to, you can only banish 1 card. It doesn't have a cost. You get to use it as long as there's at least 1 card in the graveyard. You don't have to wait until there's 5. The main reason why I mention this is because, let's say, at the beginning of a duel, your opponent sets a monster ends their turn. So we're going to use an example here. At the beginning of a duel, your opponent sets a monster ends their turn. You summon a monster and attack it. It ends up being Treeborn Frog. Now let's say that you know that your opponent is playing Monarch, and you do not want that frog to come back, or else your opponent's going to get those Monarch effects. Well, you can still activate your Soul Release, even if there are no other cards in the graveyard, and then you can get rid of that one Treeborn Frog. This is a great way to get rid of cards that constantly return from the graveyard very easily, including Treeborn Frog, Grapha, Nephthys, and even Grunic. These cards are so annoying and come back from the graveyard on a constant basis, but if they're removed from play from Soul Release, they're not coming back. What's great about Soul Release is that it doesn't have a cost, and also it's not continuous. I know there are some other cards that can remove 1 or 2 cards from play, but those are continuous, so they're in danger of cards like Mystic Space Fixes. Finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about with Soul Release is that when played right, it can be your answer for tough to get rid of cards like Stardust Dragon or even Stardust Dragon Assault Mode. I have been sacked so many times by that card. However, I have been saved a couple times thanks to Soul Release. I'm actually going to show you guys a replay demonstrating how Soul Release, tied with one other card, can help get rid of both Stardust Dragon and Stardust Dragon Assault Mode. Okay guys, so let's go ahead and take a look at this replay real quick. I have it set up, we're in a tag duel, and my opponent, Hannibal, is about to summon Stardust Dragon. So let's go ahead and play this real quick. Then they pull out Stardust Dragon and end the turn. Then my opponent will go. Then they use Effect Veiler, can't do anything about it, so they will end like that. Okay, once it gets to my turn, I will show you guys what to do in order to get rid of Stardust Dragon. And this also works on Stardust Dragon Assault Mode, and I will explain once it gets to my turn. Okay, so let's take a look at what I have in my hand. The 2 cards that I'm going to be using to get rid of Stardust Dragon is Soul Release and Soul Taker. So let me explain. The first thing you want to do is get Stardust Dragon in the graveyard. If it was Stardust Dragon Assault Mode, you'd also want to get that in the graveyard. That's the important thing. And the best way to do that is to make your opponent use the effect. So for best results, I suggest Soul Taker. Reason being is that Soul Taker destroys the opponent's monster and then they gain 1,000 life points. So with Soul Taker, you get to choose a monster, in this case Stardust Dragon. If they choose to activate the effect, Stardust Dragon is in the graveyard. If they choose not to activate the effect, Stardust Dragon is still in the graveyard. So either way, you're getting their monster in the graveyard. Now the reason why I suggest Soul Taker is because if this was Stardust Dragon Assault Mode, if they chose to allow Soul Taker to go through, they would miss the timing, because Soul Taker forces your opponent to gain 1,000 life points after it destroys the monster. Therefore, if they don't use Stardust Dragon Assault Mode's effect, then the timing is missed to get Stardust Dragon back. So if they're smart, they're going to have to use the effect to negate Soul Taker. So here's what I'll do. I go ahead and during main phase 1, I activate Soul Taker on the Stardust Dragon, and obviously they use the effect to negate it. So now here we're at the optimal position. Now that it's in the graveyard, I activate Soul Release. Using Soul Release's effect, I can take out Stardust Dragon and anything else they want from the graveyard. Therefore, Stardust Dragon can't keep its effect to return from the graveyard. Now in this case, my opponent had been putting Neospatian cards into the graveyard. So I figured, you don't need those in the graveyard. So as we go ahead and go there, just removed all the monsters they had in the graveyard. So as you can see, at the beginning of the next turn, Stardust Dragon does not come back. So using Soul Release and one other card, in this case Soul Taker, can be an easy fix for Stardust Dragon Assault Mode, especially since we know that card is very difficult to get rid of. And that's it for the replay.
Alright, so that's it for Soul Release. Let me know if you can think of other great combos that work with this card in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos just like this one. I'll be discussing more cards that are not used very often but can still be very good, and I'll also be recording some live duels for you guys. If there's a certain card that you guys would like me to discuss in detail, go ahead and let me know. And finally, stay tuned for my Legacy of Darkness box opening coming very soon. Hopefully I can pull some great older cards for you guys, maybe even pull a Yatagarasu. Once again, subscribe for more videos, stay tuned for my Legacy of Darkness box opening. Thanks guys, and bcdfezz signing out.